A priori is not designed to benefit the individual the way personal development programs are. There is no such thing as personal development that exists as a stand-alone process, except in people's imaginations. Nor is there a personal development program that depends on the empathy of others. Politics is all about helping individuals be better using other people's money. No politician gets elected on a platform that promises to reduce your benefits. It's the benefits other groups receive that are too generous. But governments can only redistribute what already exists. What exists was created by someone and as such, belongs to someone. Liberals seem to have a hard time realizing government giveaways are nothing more than a redistribution of what already exists. Politicians rob Peter to benefit Paul and then take back some of what they gave Paul, to pacify Peter. If a person does not practice the black arts, he or she cannot survive as a politician. Politicians do not work within the rules God laid down. Politicians do not know the way of perfection. But it is not just the politician that seems to receive more than they give. Personal development programs appear to depend on the skills of the necromancer. Weight loss programs claim weight can be lost without work. The client is not the problem. No one needs to change their life just to lose weight. Obesity is caused by social factors such as poverty, not by immorality. This faulting of society for actions done by individuals is carried over into the field of economics and mental health. If you are poor or depressed, it is not the fault of the individual. Society is composed of individuals, none of whom are to blame for what is happening to them. How a social system is able to impact the endocrine system is not explained. The victim may have 100 times more than what their parents had, but if you feel entitled to more, society is systematically harming you. One side of the liberal equation says we are owed what we want. We are told we are entitled to what we desire, because we are human. The other side of the same equation tells us we are not responsible for the wrong we do. But this is magical thinking. Ultimately, when we strip away the details of the liberal agenda, nothing left but black magic or witchcraft. Nothing exists that was not created, and if it is created, it belongs to the one that created it. Magic does not build community. If you believe in magic, you cannot build community. Perfectionists build community because they want something better and they no longer believe in magic. To produce community, we need personal development because community is as we are perfect. As we build a community, we improve ourselves. If we perfect ourselves, community follows. Evil people and evil acts do not build, in fact they tear down, community. The perfected truth. What you create, God gave to you. No one has a right to take what you created from you. The things you create include you. What you create you own, including your community. Among the things you create, as you are perfected, is the community in which you are perfected. Community belongs to those who perfect it. Mankind has no greater purpose than to prove the existence of God. On this all salvation is founded. Our purpose as an individual is to be perfected. It is in our perfection that we fulfill our purpose and prove the existence of God. Only perfection can prove God's existence. Our purpose as an individual is to mature and become an adult. It is as an adult that we become accountable for our choices. Our purpose as a race and community is to prove God exists, but some have taken it upon themselves to attempt to prove God is dead, in a spiritual sense. By this they mean they have rendered God irrelevant. Atheists are made perfect in their own eyes. The proof of God is found or contained in the Great Commission. When we bring all nations to God, the evidence for God will have been established in the perfection of the community of faithful that has been established. But what is the dividing line between adult and child, and between those of the flesh and those of the spirit? The secular world tries to convince us there is a gradual transition between what is good and what is evil, but such is not the case. The child is a dependent and is immune from prosecution, as the child cannot be held liable for his or her actions. There is a point of decision that divides child from adult. The adult aspires to perfection. This state exists because of those who cannot make the leap from child to adult. Too many people cannot take responsibility for their actions. Too many grown persons cling to the status of a child. Too many eschew perfection for protection. The state has no function but that of substitutionary parent. The justice system takes from those convicted of a crime their responsibility. Many convicts never embrace adulthood, especially after a lengthy jail term. Criminals lose their sense of perfectibility. But mothers and fathers are not held liable for the child's actions, either. Even when the child is grown, society is liable for the costs of crime. This even includes the cost of rehabilitation. Because the child never matures, the state becomes the de facto parent. The state enables criminals to manifest Peter Pan syndrome. But why would the state think it ought to encourage the acceptance of imperfection? There is a dynamic that is playing out in society. It is unhealthy and yet self-perpetuating. The immature needs care, but the feminine child expresses a desire to nurture without having the means. This is the classical liberal. The feminist child is full of good intentions without a sense of proportion. All ills need to be fixed. But these overgrown children have no idea where the resources are to come from. Money, thinks a liberal, will fix everything. Every feminist wants a bad boy to nurse back to social health. Feminists are the spiritual healers of the demonic cult of liberalism. But they are still children, spiritually. Feminists lack the spiritual maturity needed to heal those who are spiritually sick. This is why women are told not to be preachers. But liberalism has embraced the feminist mystique and their familiarity with the black arts. Children are often motivated by the same things that motivate adults, but they lack the means to achieve the ends they work towards. A child owns nothing because he or she is a dependent. Grown children acquire assets, but as spiritual children they lack the capability to use their resources in a way that matures them. To be mature, one has to be financially viable. The bird in the nest is not mature until it can leave the nest. But if it does not leave the nest, it never fully matures. During development, the developing child works hard to learn to speak, tie their shoelaces, cut their own meat, and dress themselves. One of the last things they learn is how to support themselves financially. Generally, everything else has to be in place before this last step can be taken. But what if the process of maturation happens normally and the person goes out to work and earns sufficient income to pay her costs, but the state expropriates a sizable portion of the person's income? Without money, how is an adult to fulfill the role of an adult in a community of peers? If the father or the state made all the spending choices for their children, how mature could they become? They would not be able to marry or care for children without their guardian's permission. If a child allows themselves to be cared for by their parents, their desire to mature is lacking. The same thing happens when a community gives their earnings to a cult leader. But cults are not peopled by mature persons, they are filled by gowned people who are looking to live as children. We look at cultists as if they have a psychological problem. But what about people who participate in general elections? Are they not similarly giving up the rights of an adult to make their own decisions? Personal development is community development. Community rot is a decline in the perfectibility of the individual. There are always the outliers, the ones who rise to the occasion, and those who always need more help, but the trend is always a growing civilization where there is individual development. The solution is clear. Persona development requires personal perfection through a denial and elimination of government services. There is no other possible conclusion. We must get rid of government, but because they are no longer needed, not because we do not want them. As billionaire is far less dependent on governments than a destitute person is. But money is not the solution because currency is a service provided by the state. If 100 or 1,000 people could produce all they needed and so this in a way that was perfect, meaning no one was exploited and no one freeloaded off the others, there would be no need for the government. Personal development would be at its highest possible level. Those who really want to develop as individuals must work on civilizing their community, which necessitates us getting rid of governments as something no longer needed.